last 30 months, we've seen a big uptick in awareness, desire, and even enthusiasm expressed in the nonprofit sector to embrace diversity, equity, and inclusion generally. But I'm curious what you've observed in the work that you do day to day with nonprofit leaders and professionals. Are they actually rolling up their sleeves to do the necessary work to make DEI in their organizations a reality? Jessie, has there been greater traction and more emphasis around reconciliation and bringing the Indigenous perspective into the way that they approach DEI?
Thank you for asking this question. I really truly believe that from an Indigenous perspective, DEI is being picked up and evolving in not-for-profit environments and on their boards. There's a lot of work to be done, but I am seeing more traction as people become more comfortable with having questions and asking questions and inviting Indigenous voices into the conversation. By way of Indigenous voices being gradually invited to participate in nonprofit sector conversations, strategy, and delivery efforts through partnership development. That's what I'm seeing. And I'm going to share an example to help demonstrate this. In my work with the New Relationship Trust, I noticed that the Vancouver Foundation had created an Indigenous Priorities Program area where they hired Indigenous staff to lead, develop, and to deliver their granting program geared towards serving Indigenous communities and organizations. So I reached out to their director in order to begin to develop what I was hoping to be a meaningful relationship, given we both work to uplift the same community. And through that relationship building this past year, we were able to partner with the Vancouver Foundation, the provincial government, and United Way BC to distribute a grant for not-for-profit organizations to support recovery and resiliency. With that partnership, the New Relationship Trust was invited and allocated $5 million for us to, in a culturally appropriate way, provide that granting service to Indigenous not-for-profit organizations. So on top of being invited as a partner, the operationality, NRT was allowed to maintain culturally appropriate decision-making regarding the delivery of the grant program from a low-barrier Indigenous values-based approach. This is where I am seeing more advancement regarding Indigenous perspective and how we participate with the not-profit sector.
That's really encouraging, and I'm delighted to hear that. We know that DEI can feel like a big thing to tackle for an organization, particularly for those with limited staff and resources. Many respondents in our CharityVillage diversity survey reported that although they wanted to do a better job of integrating DEI into their organizations, they really struggled to know what to do and what to tackle first and where to start. What advice would you have, Jessie, for nonprofits beginning their DEI journey?
Nonprofits who are seeking to bring Indigenous perspective and presence into their DEI journey and on boards and in their workplaces start with relationship building based on the value of reciprocity. This needs to be done prior to doing DEI work. This is how you begin to create space for Indigenous folks to be a part of your planning and strategy building for boards, operations, and your workplaces. Either begin by reaching out to First Nations communities with which your organization takes place on the traditional territories of, or reach out to an experienced Indigenous organization that might be in alignment with your not-for-profit services. Also consider allocating resources towards hiring an Indigenous knowledge holder or sector or industry expert to contribute and inform your DEI planning and strategy development. They can be a strong advocate in carrying out reciprocal relationship building in a relevant and informed way. This step is the most important place to begin with, because we truly believe that relationship building is nation building. This may take some time, but I encourage you to invest in this important first step. It will be well worth the investment of your DEI work.
And, past the first steps, Jessie, how can organizations best implement initiatives and policies really focused on DEI and specifically Indigenous ways of being and doing in a mindful, purposeful, and really authentic way?
So it's an amazing question. In addition to building reciprocal relationships and allocating resources, Please be mindful and recognize that reconciliation is vital to your diversity and equity and inclusion journey. Reconciliation needs to be part of the work policies across industries and sectors, including DEI strategies that include moral and business priorities. Given DEI focuses on creating space for the participation and representation of different groups of individuals that in turn create and sustain a diverse, equitable, and inclusive environment, and that truth and reconciliation focuses on an ongoing process of establishing and maintaining respectful relationships. Be purposeful in your execution by researching, reflecting, acknowledging, and dismantling systemic racism or discrimination in your governance policies, systems, operations, procedures, people, and organizational structure. And work on acknowledging, unlearning, and relearning aspects of your own way of thinking and doing that may unknowingly exclude or disrupt Indigenous inclusion efforts in DEI. You can begin this by participating in things such as cultural awareness training and doing that individually as a board and as an organization. And remember, Indigenous people are very, very slowly, after generations of exclusion, gradually being invited to lead in spaces that were not built for us. Think about that for a minute. What comes to mind for you when you look around your nonprofit organization and in your boardrooms? And write down what you're thinking and use that as a self-reflection point. So before you execute DEI efforts to include Indigenous folks on your boards and in your workplaces, take intentional preparatory steps individually and collectively to create a sense of belonging through understanding and learning about Indigenous perspectives and worldviews. That is a DEI journey that will have impact when it comes to Indigenous inclusion.
Well, I think you're almost leading to my next question, which is really, what are some of the barriers to success? How can organizations prevent tokenization and instead create a more meaningful experience for their employees, volunteers, and board members?
So to avoid tokenism, consider the statement, nothing about us without us. This is what I hear many Indigenous leaders say throughout my childhood, youth, and my adulthood and across different industries and sectors when it comes to including Indigenous presence and voice. Nothing about us without us. All organizations need to recognize that paternalistic approaches to planning and delivery of inclusion efforts that serve to include Indigenous folks need to be developed with Indigenous folks. By including the people of which your initiatives are intended to invite in, you have a stronger opportunity for success. As much wisdom and experience we all hold, we do not know everything. We need our efforts to be truly representative of the lived experience of the communities we support right from the conception phase. By inviting voices in as a vocal contributing part of the creation of DEI efforts creates a two-way learning and sharing environment that will lead to collaborative and transparent efforts. Not including these folks and just bringing them in afterwards without the Indigenous perspective and worldview present does not come across as authentic or relevant as much as the intention is there.
How do organizations best acknowledge intersectionality and focus on a broader representation when they're crafting their overarching DEI strategy?
Intersectionality is the acknowledgement that everyone has their own unique experiences of discrimination and oppression, and we must consider everything and anything that can marginalize people like gender, race, class, sexual orientation, etc. And from an Indigenous lens, consider this. The Indigenous population with Canada is extremely diverse. Indigenous often refers to First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. Make sure to acknowledge and understand and learn about the uniqueness within and among Indigenous communities, not only the differences between Indigenous and non-Indigenous people. Please take that into consideration and into account when creating DEI strategies that serve Indigenous folks. There's an intersectionality that is present there also.
That's great in terms of insight for a lot of people who are struggling with intersectionality and understanding the impacts on a variety of different groups of people. Full disclosure for our audience, Charity Village is honored to be working with Jessie on e-learning courses designed to help board become more diverse and inclusive. Maybe you could describe how you're helping boards decolonize their practices and embrace a more Indigenous approach.
I'm honored to be invited to join Synergy Executive and Board's consulting group to share offerings and guidance by way of workshops and lessons and training and speaking engagements that brings people together to focus on decolonizing the boardroom and diverse aspects of governance from an Indigenous perspective. And I do this based on my lived experience, my professional and educational experiences, as well as elder teachings. This is an example of an Indigenous worldview. We bring a holistic intelligence to this work. And this is special because Trish welcomes me to share those strategies and stories that are representative of walking in what is often referred to as two worlds, Indigenous and non-Indigenous worldviews. I do this in a way that is relevant to what my elders, community, and leaders have taught me, and that this allows me to do this from an authentic place that is intended to continue to bring us together, to learn and co-collaborate and co-develop effective DEI strategies that create the most welcoming, safe, and brave spaces for Indigenous leaders. Some of the work that we do includes providing workshops and training and lesson planning for decolonizing boardrooms with diverse organizations across sectors and industries. We've also gone and done governance foundation training with an all Indigenous woman cohort from across BC in partnership with Minerva BC, as well as support boards and committees with their understanding and growth in DEI and decolonization for boards and executive positions. And of course, we are honored to co-create an online program for Charity Village regarding decolonizing and DEI of boards and leadership. This is a testament of what is possible when multiple partners come together. As a First Nations woman, I have come to recognize how much I need brilliant humans and experienced organizations to stand beside with, to create awareness and extend invitations to others to see themselves as valuable participants in understanding and incorporating Indigenous perspectives, values, ways of knowing and being, and reconciliation into DEI efforts for the betterment of all humans from all four directions. Because Indigenous perspective is about being a good humans to each other today, good humans to Mother Earth, and good humans who are creating a future worthy of generations to come.
Well, we're very honored to be collaborating with you in these terrific courses. Do you have any tips or strategies for individuals who want to become stronger allies or agents of change within their organizations?
I suggest seeking out people, others who are doing DEI work that are in alignment with you, other organizations, other professionals, family, friends. I like to call these people balcony people. Those cheering you up in this work, inviting you to join them, to learn and share together. It is vitally important to seek out impactful connections inside and outside your organization in the broader community. You can in part do this by looking around the room, look around this virtual circle. These are people showing up for DEI work. Come together, continue to support each other. You're not in this alone. There's a quote that speaks to this that one of my dear friends shared with me, and it is, meaningful connections is like poking at a fire. Pay attention to the sparks because we need each other in this work.
That's wonderful imagery. I wonder if you could offer one insight or key takeaway to our audience today about making DEI a reality in their organization, their leadership, and their services. What would it be?
My biggest suggestion is to focus on bringing in Indigenous experts, industry experts, and knowledge holders to help you and support you in your DEI efforts in regards to bringing in Indigenous perspectives and worldviews. Together, we can find a solution to the gap of the presence.
Well, thank you, Jessie.